Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leyland brothers. Whatever it is that you want to see, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. No matter whatever that happens to be, ask the Leyland brothers. Come on, begin it and join in the fun. Travel all over Australia.
Well, we certainly have an interesting variety of stories for you in this episode of Ask the Leyland Brothers. To begin with, we travel to Tasmania, to Davenport. There we go out with an eel fisherman and show what happens to the eels after they're caught when they're processed in a factory. Then we move north to New South Wales to the small town of Murringo. At Murringo we meet a man who is probably one of the world's best engravers of beautiful crystal.
Then we go overseas to Papua New Guinea, to the city of Port Moresby, to have a look at the police training college up there, where they train the policemen and the police dogs.
Well, these slippery little eels are something that, as kids, we've all managed to get caught around our fishing lines at one time or another, and we've cursed them all. But you'd never think that eels, in fact, can be made into a commercial fishing enterprise, but they can. And we've come to Tasmania to answer a request about eels, which we received from Kenneth Townsend from Shepparton in Victoria. And he writes, "I have heard that there are people who are eel farming. Is this true? And if so, what do they do with the eels?" Well, they don't actually farm the eels, they fish the wild eels out of the rivers and lagoons, and then they process them in a factory.
Heading downstream in the light of dawn, professional eel fisherman Trevor Sims and his son check the special eel nets placed along the Mersey River about 10 kilometres from Davenport. Only a stick marks the net's whereabouts, and it can only be seen at low tide. Usually the nets are full of hundreds of wriggling eels. When the nets are cleared, they reset them ready to be cleared the following morning. No bait is used to attract the eels. They simply follow the ever-narrowing funnel of the nets until they cannot return through the tiny opening and are trapped. The net design is a direct copy of the type used in Europe for centuries. The life cycle of the eel does not lend itself to farming. The eels commence life as a tiny elver at a great depth in the ocean north of New Caledonia, many thousands of kilometres away. They are washed by the currents along the eastern seaboard of Australia and end up in the mouths of all the streams and rivers, where, as tiny transparent leaf-shaped elvers, they change into darker coloured baby eels. They live then in the rivers and lagoons, growing until they reach sexual maturity and commence the journey down the rivers to return to the breeding grounds near New Caledonia. They never return after breeding.
There we go.
In a good morning's fishing, Trevor Sims catches around 500 to 600 eels. Fishing the tidal rivers like this is restricted to certain times of the year, but there are still plenty of eels to be caught in the dams and lagoons and freshwater streams at other times. The catch must be kept wet in the bottom of the boat and rapidly taken back to a holding dam. The eels are collected daily by a mobile tank and transported to the processing factory at Limana Junction. This is the venture of Piers and Susie Rannicker. At one time they were dairy farmers, but could not make a decent living from it, so took up processing smoked eels 7 years ago. The eels are transferred to a large swimming tank, where they're starved for 3 to 4 days to allow them to empty their stomachs. This is important to avoid the finished eels from having discoloration of the flesh and an earthy taste. When ready for processing, the eels are scooped into large plastic tanks ready for sorting into various sizes. 200 grams to 400 grams is the ideal size for the Japanese market, and 400 grams up to 3 kilograms is ideal for the European market, and that's where 90% of the eels go. In Europe, they're considered a real gourmet dish, with prices about the same as smoked salmon. All eels for export are frozen whole, but some are smoked here for Australian consumption. This massive eel is oversized for commercial use and has probably grown this way from being landlocked in a dam for years. Even though the fishermen carry out their own sorting of the eels, some still reach the factory which are under the 200-gram commercial size, and these are released in dams and allowed to grow for later use. The Ranniker children, John and Sophie, love to help out and are quick to volunteer for the job of releasing the baby eels. This large dam, built originally for irrigation water, now serves as a holding dam for the eels to grow. They will be left for at least 12 months before being caught and checked for size. The eels selected for smoking are first killed with a sudden electric shock in a killing tank. Then they're cleaned by hand and made ready for the smoking process. The eels must now be soaked in a salty brine and allowed to absorb a 2% salt content before being strung onto stainless steel rods and suspended on a large rack. On the rack, it's important that their stomach cavity is held open by small stainless steel pins and that none of the eels are in contact with each other. In the old days, smoking of salmon and eels was carried out in an old-fashioned smokehouse, but these days more scientific methods are employed which guarantee exacting control and no losses. The fuel for the smoke is supplied by sawdust and is controlled by a specially built machine. During the smoking process, which lasts about 5 hours, the rack is rotated several times to provide an even treatment. The finished product is packed and frozen, ready for shipment to the various parts of Australia, and will eventually be served on the tables of some of the more exclusive restaurants. Smoked eels are rated highly in Europe, especially in Germany, and according to the Rannikers, Australians too are developing a taste for this unlikely gourmet dish. Wendy Pym of Young in New South Wales suggests that we should take our Ask the Leyland brothers cameras to the small town of Murringo, where an Austrian craftsman works with glass. Murringo is a small country town about half an hour's drive from Young. Here the locals have a craft centre selling handmade goods from an old store. Adjacent to the store is an old blacksmith shop, and it's in this unlikely setting that we find one of the world's greatest masters of hand-engraved crystal glass toiling by the heat of a kiln. Austrian-born Helmut works here with his wife Erna, turning out vases, drinking goblets and other glass vessels to sell to tourists. Helmut began his career as a glassblower in his native Austria before completing a 4-year course in crystal engraving. He has worked for various factories, worked for himself, worked with the famous Steuben Glass Works in New York, and now has come to Australia to escape the rat race. It seems odd that a man whose works have been sold for over $30,000 each should settle here and earn his living by glassblowing, but he prefers it this way and still has time to create his engravings when it suits him. He melts down old bottles in his own kiln, and from the glass fashions a variety of jugs and vases. Visitors to the old blacksmith shop love to watch the fascinating process of glass blowing, and usually go away with a souvenir of their visit. Helmut says he would prefer to be creating lead crystal engravings all the time if he could, but the glass blowing brings in the bread and butter money. People are more inclined to buy a vase of $5 or $6 than to commission an engraving for around $400 or $500. Helmut likes to work in the quietness of a small workshop attached to his house when he's creating an engraving. At the moment, he's engraving a horse on a glass mug. Crystal engraving differs from crystal cutting in that the glass object is pulled towards a copper grinding wheel rather than away from the operator and onto the grinding wheel. A designer engraver has to be a true artist in his own right before he can achieve the perfection of Helmut's work. He is considered among the 5 best crystal engravers in the world. When he worked in Austria, he produced a magnificent crystal tray which was presented to Queen Elizabeth by the Austrian government. A single 30-centimetre high engraving depicting the 1001 Arabian Nights fetched $31,500 when offered for sale in New York. For finer detail, Helmut fits smaller grinding wheels. Some of the smallest, barely the size of a pinhead, are used to etch the finest details onto the glass. Helmut has been drawing since he was a child, and today his horses seem to convey a sense of animation, each straining muscle rippling through the animal's powerful legs. A true three-dimensional picture. Many hours of careful work are required to create the engravings, and like any art form, no two are exactly the same. For the finer work, he uses only the very best crystal glass, containing a 24% lead content. This exclusive crystal comes from special furnaces lined with platinum, and is only available from about 3 places in the world. Helmut's work is quite varied, covering religious themes, mythological, sport, portraits, abstract, and pictorial. This particularly fine work depicts the Adam and Eve story, complete with serpent and apple tree. It contains the finest of detail and is valued at over $4,000. Some of the work on this engraving is so fine, it really has to be seen under a magnifying glass to appreciate the minute details. A piece like this would require around 300 hours of work and is engraved onto a piece of the finest crystal in the world. Crystal like this from the special kilns in Europe is guaranteed flawless. At the moment, Helmut works on pieces like these to satisfy his own desire to create works of art, but he hopes in the long run to make a worthwhile living with commissioned works. Each of these creations varies in value according to the purity of the materials used and the skill and creative talent of the artist. The originality of design and the uniqueness of handwork crystal make it all the more valuable.
Mrs. C. Lynch of Goroka in Papua New Guinea suggested that we might like to do a story on the police training college of Bamana near Port Moresby in Papua New Guinea. She saw our program while she was on holidays in Sydney and thought it might make a good story. Well, Mrs. Lynch, we're going to have a look at the training college. We have arrived in time to see a passing out parade of newly trained police officers. Squads 8 and 9 are on parade to be inspected by the Commandant of the Police Training College, Superintendent Pat Barry. 50 policemen and 6 policewomen are passing out today and will commence their duties around Port Moresby almost immediately. The college has about 750 recruits in various stages of training, and about 600 men pass out as police officers each year. The recruits come from all areas of Papua New Guinea and can be posted to almost anywhere in the country when they have proven their capabilities. This is the first year women have been trained as police in Papua New Guinea. More are being recruited all the time.
So I won't hold you up any longer, but to say good luck, Godspeed, and let's hope that you all make good policemen.
Before the passing out parade, the recruits go through a rigorous training program. Number 11 squad is doing 4 months of physical training, which includes a high proportion of self-defence. The officer in charge of self-defence is Laurie Cortez. Laurie learnt the art of self-defence in the Philippines and passes his knowledge on to these new recruits.
Strangle. Leg out. No. Out this way. There. Bend over.
One leg.
There.
I kick you!
Right, let's go.
Laurie Cortez and Senior Constable Kingsley Remedios demonstrate Mondananas, the martial art of the Philippines, stick fighting, a handy defence tactic in a country where many areas are still relatively primitive and spears and bows are still in common use.
Down! Right, go! What the heck is that?
Swimming and life-saving techniques are taught as part of the physical training scheme.
Right, push up.
As in any course, the classroom plays an important role.
What does it say?
Advanced training is completed with the aid of modern recording facilities and closed-circuit television. The college also houses the headquarters of the police dog training section. Selected policemen who express a keen interest can join the dog section and learn dog handling as well. A new man takes over an untrained puppy and they go through the training course together. Here's Les Jewell, Chief Inspector of the dog training section. Now, Les, how long have they been using dogs in Papua New Guinea?
1966 we initially started.
And how many dogs do you have actually in Papua New Guinea?
We have 36 at the present time. We'll be building up to 80 by 1981.
And how long would it take to train a dog from a puppy to a completely trained dog ready to go in the field?
Approximately 2 years, but in fact his training is never finished. Right through his working life, he receives training every week.
First Constable Iaria and his dog Sudden have completed their training. The dog squad from Vamana puts on a demonstration of their skills for our cameras. These exercises are used to give the dog confidence in a variety of situations that might arise in the field. Apprehension of a criminal is one of the dog's main objectives. Here at the college, the dogs are taught to catch and hold his quarry until the police officer can check him out for weapons. If a criminal makes a sudden attack, the dog will react quickly.
Sit. Sit.
Even a criminal with a gun can be apprehended with added safety by using a trained dog.
Go find it. Go find it. Go find it. Boy, drink. Here. Come drink. You drink. Good boy. Go on. Bring it out. Bring it.
The police here don't use guns like they do in Australia, do they?
No, no pistols at all.
So the dog is, in fact, a much better weapon, in fact, I suppose.
Well, at least they will go around corners, won't they, whereas a bullet won't.
Yeah, that's true. This dog saved his handler's life, but had his own back leg shot in the fight. The incident occurred during a routine patrol like this one. Patrols by police officers with their trained dogs has greatly reduced the petty crime rate in Port Moresby and other centres around Papua New Guinea.
Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leylands, travel all over the countryside, ask the Leyland brothers. Whatever it is that you want to see, ask the Leylands, no matter whatever that happens to be, ask the Leyland brothers. Come on, me in it and join in the fun, travel all over Australia.